Hello there, my very good friends. On this news video, we're paying tribute to Ozzy Osbourne, who has passed away at 76 years old. I'm Andy.
I'm Michael.
And this is the news. A bit of an off-topic one today. But such a cultural phenomenon of a human being that I feel like we kind of have to talk about it. And also, he is tied to the wrestling world through his position in the WWE Hall of Fame and various appearances over the decades that we'll talk about in a little minute. And to me, wrestling and loud music have been tied together for I don't know, since the 70s. So it's all a whole world that comes together and something that we should just talk about. So Ozzy Osbourne, frontman of Black Sabbath, of course, passed away yesterday. The Osbourne family released a statement. I'll read that to you now. It is with more sadness than mere words can convey that we have to report that our beloved Ozzy Osbourne passed away this morning. He was with his family and surrounded by love. We ask everyone to respect our privacy at this time. So it's no secret that he was not a well man. His health problems are well documented for, a lot of his adult life, really. But it was in 2019, I believe, that he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And I believe that had left him unable to walk towards the end of his time. We saw, it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I paid for the live stream and watched the whole show. It was like 9 hours. He was able to perform at his Back to the Beginning final show at Villa Park in Birmingham, England. But he was like on a throne. It's a hell of a performance for a 76-year-old man with Parkinson's. He still sounded like himself, which is like the main thing you want from a situation like this. Even though you could see he was clearly struggling to get through it. But let's not reduce the man to his last days. Obviously, one of the most influential musicians of all time. I think if you were to make a list of the most interesting lives that have ever been lived, I think you would struggle to name like 5 more people than Ozzy Osbourne. Building-sized presence on stage, much like pro wrestling, an absolute king of pageantry and performance. And we've all seen the videos, even like when he was like 60 years old, running around stage like a man half of his age, despite crashing vehicles and going through physical hell. He was always coming back and defying everything. Obviously, a man who lived a lot during his peak years. And some of the most influential, not just heavy metal, but rock music in terms of his solo output. There's differences between Sabbath and Ozzy solo stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But look, this is a wrestling channel. Let's talk about some of his wrestling contributions.
My first discovery of Ozzy Osbourne was sort of learning my history as a young Fed fan when you would go back through the tapes and the magazines and the things that you'd missed whenever it was that you jumped on the crazy train. And in Ozzy's case, it was at WrestleMania 2. He was kind of famous alongside Captain Lou Albano as the manager of the co-managers of the British Bulldogs against Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. Yeah. When the Bulldogs became tag team champions, there's quite a famous shot of him having the microphone thrust in his face, and he goes, "The British Bulldogs forever!" And it's just a nice sort of celebratory moment on a show that isn't full of them. That's genuinely one of the highlights of that WrestleMania. And then years and years later, sort of through the, through many things, but through the success of the Osbournes as a reality TV show, both himself and Sharon Osbourne appeared as 2 of the more fondly remembered guest hosts in that otherwise pretty terrible era. This was 2009, and they did a kind of Raw's Got Talent thing because it was part of Sharon being a judge on America's Got Talent, and you had Chris Masters doing the titty dance to Crazy Train, and like just a big beaming smile on Ozzy Osbourne's face as he saw it go down. Had a backstage to do with Chris Jericho, I think, obviously Fozzy, in like direct tribute to Ozzy Osbourne when Chris Jericho first formed. Fozzy is kind of a loving homage to that era of rock music. You mentioned he went in the Hall of Fame in 2021 because of these contributions, and one that presumably will outlive Ozzy Osbourne himself. Since 2017, when Triple H brought back War Games, obviously, from WCW's history into NXT, and now on the main roster on Survivor Series, War Pigs has been part of that presentation every year. It's obviously kind of a love letter to an era and a style of music that Triple H was always a big fan of. And you sense that that's there for keeps now. I can't imagine that ever going away.
Yeah.
It's become as key to this War Games presentation that has gone from the NXT TakeOver to the annual November Survivor Series. It's become as embedded in the tradition as anything else in that show's history. And I imagine now, long may that continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did, was it like a taped intro for like the War Games 2022?
Yes,
I think it
that's
was, and
right,
stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, and he's had songs on like video game soundtracks and stuff. So, you know, and like I kind of touched upon earlier, I think that wrestling is it's a form of showmanship, and if you're a singer in the most influential metal band of all time, that's a pretty close tie, right? I think like wrestling and like heavy music, metal, whatever genres, subgenres you want to name, they kind of go hand in hand. They're both outsider art forms. They're both deeply misunderstood by people who don't get it. And for me, they both work best when they embrace being the outsider and they're not just reaching for record sales or mainstream acceptance or whatever. And look, it's no secret that I love that stuff. And Black Sabbath, if they don't come along, 80% of what I like to listen to doesn't exist. It simply doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? If it's not for Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, and Ozzy Osbourne rocking up in the late 60s, early 70s, none of that happens. You listen to the very first, the Black Sabbath title track, the song Black Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath from the album Black Sabbath. It's the most evil sounding thing in the world, even today. And a huge part of that is Tony Iommi's riffing in the Butler Ward rhythm section, which is absolutely legendary. But Ozzy's, at the time, unique vocal delivery. Even if you don't like that form of music, you know what Ozzy Osbourne sounds like and you know who he is.
Yeah.
Piercing, high register, kind of nasally, and absolutely iconic. And I think it speaks well. There's a genre that no Sabbath, no metal. That's just how it goes. But there's a genre that's like a direct lineage subgenre called doom metal, which focuses on those early Sabbath albums. And it's like a dark, brooding, slower, sometimes mid-paced sound, but mostly slower, mournful kind of tones, spooky vibes. At least if you know your doom metal, you know that at least half the people in that genre are just doing Ozzy's voice.
Yeah.
Right? They're just wailing like the great man himself. And that, it's like a direct rip almost, but it's awesome and nobody cares because it's so awesome. And then you just like his solo career as well. Obviously, a bit not as evil as a song like Black Sabbath or NIB or Warning or whatever. Name your early favorite Sabbath songs. More of a rock orientated thing, more bombastic, I would say. But like Crazy Train. I mean, who doesn't love flipping Crazy Train? Bark at the Moon, No More Tears, Mr. Crowley, like Mama, I'm Coming Home. There's so much there. It's such a deep legacy, but I think it goes far beyond that either. This is a legitimate cultural icon we're talking about, right? It's not just some dude who sang some cool songs in the 70s and 80s. In fact, that actually does him a disservice as well, because even if you go into the 2000s, Perry Mason is an absolute banger, right? I think that's one of his best songs, and it's like, it comes like 30 years after his heyday. It's insane.
He sung live, thinking about it, on a SmackDown in 2007.
Yes, he did.
It was a soundtrack for Judgment Day on pay-per-view.
There you go.
I Don't Want to Stop It was. I only know that because of the wrestling thing. I cannot pretend to be as in the weeds as you are, but like he was still out there, like knocking out new stuff that was used, as you say, in these like overlapping worlds as well. And he was doing it live, and he was looking well for it as well, again, for his age and life experience. And
he was magic in that final. Like, that final show was like, in a wrestling context, it was maybe like Sting-esque. Like, he just...
look at the lineup.
He just conjured it was still there. The spark was still there, even though he was, restricted to this chair. He still had it. It's ridiculous.
But the whole music world wanting to give their time and energy for it, like to such a vast quantity and degree as well. Like that lineup spoke for itself in terms of the reverence towards like Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. And
every band did a cover, and it was like they raised something like 15, maybe more £1 million for charity, and like a lot of Birmingham-based charities as well, because they ran these ads during it and all this stuff. And yeah, look, it's not strictly a wrestling topic we're talking about today, but some things just transcend that, the world. And, he did have his foot in there, and I think like ultimately, how many wrestlers have looked at rock stars and rock frontmen as influence, right? How many throughout the years? I mean, Chris Jericho is an obvious one these days, and he's obviously stepped into the music world himself with, hey, they're playing here soon. They play here a lot. Remember his famous video? Chilling on the thing. But yeah, like, these two worlds go hand in hand is the point. And a lot of the showmanship and the pageantry and the wild... lavish, often out of control stories have influenced dozens and dozens of your favorite wrestlers over the years, and it's sad. Obviously, when stuff like this happens, initially I think of the family, and those who are immediately impacted by these horrible situations, and then. But then I just go online and I like spending time with memories and reading Tony Iommi's tribute and Bill Ward's and watching old live performances and revisiting old videos. So yeah, it's a sad, sucky day. WWE has a little tribute up on their website, as they would, given the close ties between the two parties over the years. And just one of those things. I always thought, you'll have heard a lot of people say this, but I always thought Ozzy was invincible because he went through so much.
Just reminded me of Sabu actually getting the last match in and then passing away quite soon after. It's the same with Ozzy getting that big a show.
Exactly.
It's almost like you get that one last sort of flash of their brilliance just in under the wire, and then it kind of hits you as a bit of a shock, all the more so.
It's almost poetic in a way, and I'm glad he got to do that final show. I thought it was a really beautiful send-off, and rest in peace. Sad day for sure. But we'll be back later on with a bit of a more wrestling-centric video. I just thought it was important to talk about this today, I'm not going to lie. Check out the video that's on your screen right now if you want a follow-up. The algorithm's going to pick one for you. We'll be back later talking about Drew McIntyre and all kinds of silly wrestling stuff. But rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne, and thank you for everything.